5 scores! Rick Vaughn.
We've decided to get ourselves back in the game again with our podcast.
Rick Vaughn, Gary Geddes.
Probably the craziest story that you're ever going to hear about hockey.
We're going to be coming back to you on a regular basis.
You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 112 of the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs fan. Joining him, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, how's things?
Things aren't too bad, Mike. Just preparing for Sweden tomorrow and getting packed up and ready to go.
Well, maybe give
Looking
listeners a
forward
little
to it.
idea why you're going to Sweden.
Well, we're playing a hockey game that's going to be broadcast across the whole country of Sweden, and it benefits the I don't know if it's the Boreas Salming Foundation for ALS or the ALS Foundation. I'm not really 100% sure, but what we're doing is good, and we're gonna, help people with ALS, hopefully.
Well, we're bookending a lot of things from your past with the Maple Leafs. Boria on the weekend, and today we're speaking with about a subject that was very near and dear to you, and we have a couple of very special guests with us today. Just no particular order. The first guy, I guess, to lead this off was founded Lone Eagle Entertainment in 1996 and became an award-winning producer of shows such as You Gotta Eat Here, Pop Stars, Game On, Get a Grip on Golf. That'd be a good one for you and I. Just to mention a few, but we're very interested in his latest venture, Offside, the Harold Ballard Story. So please welcome Michael Geddes. Michael, first off, thanks for joining us, and how's it going?
Excellent. Good to be here, guys, and excited about Ultimate Leafs Fan today.
Well, yeah, we get that all the time. And our second guy, though, the second guy was a Vancouver fan. Now, Squid, that goes back to your days of Vancouver, but I would be remiss if I didn't say he was best known for playing a teenage heartthrob, Brandon Walsh, on the very popular series in the 1990s, Beverly Hills 90210. He starred in Call Me Fritz, another Canadian series, Private Eyes, and he has too many roles and commercials to mention. But today we want to discuss his role as director and narrator of Offside, the Harold Ballard Story. Also, Jason Priestley, thanks for joining us, and how's it going, Jason?
Yeah, you got it, guys. Good to see everybody.
Now, sorry, Jason, before we start, you have a film resume as long as your arm. Ironically, Harold references something in that documentary to that effect. Maybe that's another story when we get to that. But does a day go by when someone doesn't bring up Brandon Walsh to you?
At this point in my life, yes. Days go by, but weeks don't go by.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair enough. Now, when you landed that part, any idea the longevity and popularity the show would have? Like, here we are 25 years later and still talking about it.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I had no idea. You always go into a new show like that. And of course, that was back in the day when we just shot pilots for shows. I mean, you always used to shoot the pilot for a show and hope for the best. I mean, you just hope to get, a pickup and get to make more episodes. I mean, we just hoped that the show would go beyond the pilot stage, right? We had no idea that we were going to be in for a 10-year run on a global phenomenon like that. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity and something that I'll always remember and something that I always feel incredibly blessed to be a part of.
Well, we're proud of you because you're Canadian, and we as Canadians, we all stick together. So we all pull that way. And, Michael, let's get to you. How did Offside come to fruition and why Harold Ballard?
So the project started as a scripted project, actually. I enlisted the support of first Chuck Tatham, who's a talented Canadian writer living in LA. And we started down this road. We brought Jason on board to direct it. And, getting that project done, which was a scripted version of Ballard's life, Chuck wrote a great script. And, we were climbing that mountain, getting it financed. A couple of things happened, one of them being COVID, and it just kind of stalled us. So in the process, though, we accumulated so much information, so much research on the life of Harold that it was very, very clear that a documentary had to be done. And when I checked, and as a producer, you know, when that light bulb goes off and you realize nobody had done the documentary, it was very exciting. And we got it, fortunately, into production right away, and with the CBC, and made a great go of it. And now I think that this documentary is maybe our greatest selling tool to get the scripted version done.
Michael, writing the script, what was the message you wanted to get across to viewers?
Just it was still consistent with the documentary, that here was a guy that ran unchecked. He had a very, very valuable public institution in his control called the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you know how he just ran amok and didn't have anybody challenging him along the way, and just an incredible character that he was. So I think, you know, we did that in a documentary. We did this in the script, but it's really a story about a guy. And what excited me is Harold Ballard. You know, at that time in Canada, nobody was like Harold Ballard. Nobody existed like him. He was probably the country's biggest character, let alone Toronto. And you know, it was just right for the picking. And you know, to have so many great people join our documentary and talk about their experience with Harold, and not really look to pile on what was a very public persona perception of Harold, but really tell their personal interactions and their own personal feelings about their time with the Leafs and Harold's reign, I think came through in the documentary. And, you know, Jason was very disarming, was great at getting that from everybody, and in all of his sit-down discussions. So, you know, it was just a great story that spanned, you know, 50 years, basically.
Squid?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic, personally. I think it portrayed him like to a T, really, what he was like. And I had a lot of fun being involved with it, going down and being interviewed for it and everything. But I mean, it was so true about what Harold was at that point. And, you know, the sad part is there was 21 teams in the league back then, and there was probably only 4 or 5 in the league that were run properly. And the rest were probably run like the Toronto Maple Leafs with Harold Ballard.
Yeah.
So you could probably find a few other owners that were very similar to Harold.
Jason?
Yeah, I think, you know, look, I mean, making the movie for me was a lot of fun. It was a great education. You know, I knew a little bit about Ballard, but through making this movie, I got to know a whole lot about Harold Ballard. You know, and it was a great opportunity for me and a great education for me. And I felt incredibly honored that so many great players and journalists and people came, and you know, people like Rick came and spoke to me with such candor about their experiences with Harold. You know, it was really really incredible experience, and I just hope that we took care of everybody's personal experiences. You know, it was because it was fascinating that he was. You know, he was hated by a lot of people, but he was beloved by some people as well, and every emotion in between there. You know, so I really felt like it was our responsibility as filmmakers to lay all of the evidence out as we were able to gather it from all the people who knew him, and just lay it out for the viewer and let them sort of come to their own conclusion about Harold Ballard, because he was very, very polarizing and very mercurial. And, you know, he really did a lot of things that were very, you know, contrarian. You know, he was a real, he was a very interesting character. And I think that I just hope that the people get that takeaway from the piece.
Well, the interesting thing is that because we, you know, as fans, we read what goes on in the paper, but if you don't know anybody what's going on behind the scenes, it would be easy, as Michael said, to pile on Harold because of the well-documented tales. But I think you would agree, Jason, that, you know, he was a complex individual, to say the least, who seemed to relish in the absurd, and the more bizarre the story surrounding him, the more he liked it. Like the story, like some of the fables, like turning the air conditioning and the water taps off for the Beatles concert. The Gardens didn't have air conditioning, didn't have water taps, but he just sort of let that tale live forever. And you guys had to distinguish all that when you're talking to guys like Rick and people around the Gardens.
Yeah, well, it was. I think that stuff was important, and I think that to show the sort of the paradox, like he was, on one hand he wanted to be known as this great promoter, and on the other hand he wanted to be known as this great businessman, like it's almost like he didn't know what lane he wanted to stay in, right? So he tried to fill up all the lanes, right, and he almost wanted to be everything to everyone all the time, and it's almost like. In business and in life, you can't do that, right? And I think that maybe that's the lesson that people should take away from this.
Squid?
Yeah, I think well, one of the things that I recall is that whatever he needed to do to get on the front page of the sports on a daily basis, he managed to do it. He was saying the most important things to the press. Just to make sure that he got on the big cover of the sports. And he pretty much achieved that almost on a daily basis during the season.
Well, one of the old tales that has been around for years and years, I had the only remaining Stanley Cup banner from 1962. The story making the rounds for years and years was that Harold had given these to the workmen and told them to use them as paint tarps and work tarps around the Gardens.
Yeah.
Well, the workmen did use them, but he had no idea they were using the banners. He just let this tale live on forever. And it wasn't until a Gardens employee, the upholsterer, he found them and found the last one and saved it. Otherwise, they were all gone. But it's just this kind of absurdity that just Harold just loved to live in.
That's interesting to me because he also did that with, what I admire about America is how they preserve their history. And we, as a country, I don't think we do nearly as good a job. But, you look at the gondola, for instance, that, that was just destroyed, and that is living history. All the games that were called from Foster Hewlett's gondola. So maybe not surprising. He just didn't have a good sense of that.
Well, it's funny. Brian McFarlane, who was not only banished from the Gardens, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and worked at the Gardens, ended up working for Harold. Harold took him through the Gardens and down in the lower bowls one day and said, I want this room cleaned out. And so, Brian looked around and he saw these cassettes and he went over and goes, Harold, these are all the game films from going right back to beginning of CBC, all our games. And he goes, I don't care. Get them out of here. I need this room cleared out. And he goes, well, can I have them? And he goes, get this crap out of here. How many times did I have to tell you, Brian, get the kids down here and clean it out. He needed it to store furniture in there. And these were all the Leaf games. And Paul Pasco, who was a contributor to your documentary, he, along with Brian, they saved them all. And all those Leaf, classic games, you see, they'd be all gone forever. And he didn't even care.
No.
Oh, my God.
No, it's terrible. Just the fact that he owned the team. Horrible. And, there was not a Smithsonian approach to Harold's world.
Yeah, the Beatles story is one of the best ones when he sold the 2 shows and the Beatles only signed up for 1. And he just handed Epstein the ticket for the check for $50,000 and said, there you go. He said, well, I'm only playing 1 contract. He said, well, you go out there and tell them they're not playing then. They took the $50,000 and went and played. That's
a great picture. I have not seen that picture in all of our archival. That's a good one.
That's a great one. I like that one.
Well, yeah, that's Glenn. Glenn is the best in the business. That's who does all this for us. He's awesome.
I like that one.
Squid?
Well, all the stories you hear, and then I was shocked when I saw the documentary, and I didn't realize that Muhammad Ali, when he wouldn't go to war and he couldn't fight in the U.S., but Harold had him come to Canada. That was Harold. He was going to do whatever he could to make money. And so he capitalized on a situation like that. And that was just the way he was. If there was an opportunity, he was going to find it.
Well, that's very true. And that was the end of Conn Smythe, that incident with Cassius Clay coming into the Garden. So that's another whole project in itself. But, Jason, how did – now, you and Michael, Michael, to describe briefly how you guys connect, but how did you really connect on the project? And first off, Jason, why did you accept? And secondly, Michael, why pick Jason?
I accepted because I initially, like Mike said, we got involved working on the scripted project together, and the scripted project was a super interesting project. Like he said, that the writer of it, Chuck Tatham, wrote a really interesting script that we were working on together. And when Mike came up with the idea to do this documentary, we all wanted to work on the documentary together because we all just thought that Ballard was such an interesting character. We all wanted to find out everything that we could about him because he was such a paradox. He was just like so many things about him didn't make sense, and the lies that he told it was so fantastical that I really tried to get, I really wanted to just as a filmmaker and as the filmmaker who was going to make the scripted drama version of it, I really wanted to do everything I could to get to the why of it, right? Why did he do all these things? Was it just greed? Was he a pathological liar? Was he a con man? Like I wanted to get to I wanted to get as close to the answer as I could. And I found it incredibly difficult because everybody I could find who knew him had a different opinion, Yep. So I think it's going to make our jobs more difficult on the scripted side of it because I think we're going to have to lay out a few versions of why he did the things that he did, because it has been very hard to get to one specific answer as to why he did those things.
Michael?
Just to touch on what Jason said, the scripted version, it would be highly stylized, meaning we're not just going to do a straight linear story of Harold Ballard. You can't. It wouldn't do the old guy justice. He was too much of a character. So that's what the fun part will be, is tackling this, as a scripted project, because we'll have a lot of style and a vision to it that'll be quite a bit different from a straight documentary as we did. The one thing about the documentary, we left people wanting more, and I think we've heard that from a lot of people. We could have probably, in hindsight, done a two-parter, which there was more than enough material, clearly, and more than enough time to still do the story the way we did it, which was very pacey. But we left them wanting more, and we do think that this scripted version will be welcomed, and we can get working on it soon. What was the first part of your question, Mike?
Why you picked Jason?
Oh, sorry. There you go. I'm glad I reminded myself, because I would have left that one as a big open hole. So first of all, Jason and I have some common friends, and we knew each other a little bit from just being in the business. And I know he's a hockey fan, and I know, quite frankly, I was very impressed with his previous documentary that he did on the Bare Naked Ladies back in, I think it was early 2000s. So this made a lot of sense. And, as soon as we started getting into things, we all, with Chuck Tatham and the three of us, as much as there was a troika and the Leafs that maybe didn't get along, we were a great troika, if I do say so. We had a lot of fun. And the one thing we can all say is, that's all you want. When all cylinders are firing and everybody's working well, and you've got a topic everybody's quite passionate about, you want to have some fun. And I think that was a nice quote and a nugget Rick gave us, that during the 80s, you do want to have some fun. You have a job, you're there to do your job.
Yeah.
We also want to enjoy the passion of getting to that point in your life. And so I'm at a point where I kind of now I just want to do topics that I really am interested in. So
let's
this
get
was
back
one.
to now Squid. Having lived through a lot of this, and Mike just touched on it, I want to get both Jason and Michael's opinion in a second on this also. But is there a topic in the doc you'd like to have seen expanded on a little more?
You know what? I'm not really sure of any one individual thing. There was a lot of things I didn't know about the Silver Seven and all this kind of stuff. But I think the only thing I probably would have liked to have maybe go into the financial part of it at the end of it and everything, just how everything ended up. And I know they kind of talk about what's her name, Yolanda getting $5 million and 2 gold tickets, and the kids got nothing, and everything went to charity. But I would have liked to have known where that money went exactly.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what about you and Jason? Now, both you guys. Mike, you go first. Like, what topic, right off the top of your head, would you like to have seen maybe expand a little more?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we had to make tight links in the chain all along, so you could argue I wanted to do more of every little link in that chain.
Yeah, of course.
But I thought actually going into this that we were spending too much time on the how Harold got the team. So the boardroom machinations and the boardroom battles that were happening. And
yep.
I love history, so just those years where they were winning the cups, I probably wished we had to spend a little more time on that in the 60s, because that was just, it would highlight just more about how Harold became how Harold was, and he was P.T. Barnum, right? He was a showman, and he had his hands on everything back in the 60s that outside of hockey. And the challenge for Jason and our team was the coverage and people to talk about that era, because there's not many people left, right? So, so that's probably for me the one area that I'm just super interested in. And you talked earlier about that Chavallo fight. I got to know George Chavallo 10, 15 years ago because I wanted to do a project with him. And he had a documentary done about him by a director and a friend of mine called The Last Round. And it was really about that fight in 1966 and how everything propelled Ali to come to Canada. The story is fantastic. And that, for Ballard to get his hands on that fight and say, I don't give a I can say shit. I don't give a shit about what anybody's thinking. I can say shit because Rick said it about 9 times in our documentary. Which is good. I'm glad you did, by the way. But Ballard said, I don't give a shit about the politics of this fight. I don't care that Ali doesn't want to go to Vietnam. I care about the fact that now this is one of the biggest news stories in the world. And he brought that fight to Toronto when every other American city and the mayor in every city was standing up saying, if you're thinking of coming to Los Angeles, forget it. We're not going to have the fight here. And then, of course, it was one of the events of the century. People don't know it, but that it was in Maple Leaf Gardens. It was one of the sporting events of the century, that fight. It was the first fight Ali did when he was blacklisted. So I think that era, that time in Toronto was fantastic. So,
Jason, what about you?
I wanted to, I kind of wish that we'd, and this was only after a few viewings of the film.
Yep.
I wish that we had tracked a little more the value of the team and the share price of the team, because the team was always publicly traded. I wish that we had spent a little more time tracking the share price of the team while the performance of the team was declining through the 80s. I wish we would have spent a little more time tracking the share price of the team, so we really could have illustrated for everybody, how in no other city in the world would it work this way. Only in Toronto and only in Canada, where everybody loves hockey so much, can the team's performance be going down and down and down every year, but the share price on the TSX just continue to go up and up and up and up and up. I think we should have spent a little more time, or spend some time illustrating that, so that we could have illustrated a little more how Ballard, through all of his cheapness and his bad decisions, was also stuffing his pockets full of money at the same time.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Jason, because Jimmy Devellano, who was GM of the Detroit Red Wings, and he became one of the single individual largest shareholders of Maple Leaf Gardens outside of corporations, and Harry Ornest and a few others. He bought the stock for that exact reason you're targeting. He knew you wouldn't spend money on the team, but
Right.
he would fill the rink with events, and the money would flow to the bottom line. So I was on Bay Street for 40 years. So one of the old adages on Bay Street is if you're going to deal in thug world, go the same way they do. So if they're buyers, so are you. And Harold was a buyer of stock, so is Jimmy.
Yeah.
And you can see the way the stock, and he actually helped price the stock at the end when he got $49.50 for it. So to your point, that's a very good observation.
Yeah, that would have been fun to do for sure.
You brought that up, Jason, because it reminded me of when I was doing my contract after the 350 goal seasons, when he said I wasn't going to get another goddamn dime from him.
Right.
And so we couldn't come to terms. They offered me 5,000 shares of Maple Leaf Gardens. And I'm thinking, oh, what do I want that for? I want the money. I want what, right? I mean, that's all I wanted was my contract and the money.
Right.
So little did I know that 5,000 shares was going to go to $250 at one time. So I guess I was the stupid one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, Michael, what did you think the biggest challenge would be to have the finished product meet your expectations?
In the to meet my expectations and Jason's, being the director, I think we just wanted to be true and not take any creative license, first of all, which I think we accomplished. The challenge was in 90 minutes trying to have a take on Harold Ballard's life. And we started in 1903 in this documentary when he was born. But not getting too confused and I think we were happy with this and meeting the expectations when I saw that we were able to fill in a lot of blanks about a guy who was an extremely public figure. That did it for me. I felt really good because it would have been cheap to just repackage and tell all the tales about why people disliked Harold. I think we enlightened a lot of people that might have even been hardcore, people to the story that knew the story intimately. I think we can be quite proud that we brought some new stuff to the table and some great old footage along with it.
So what turned out to be the biggest challenge then?
Archival was very challenging. For a guy who was as public as Harold, he did, and we've talked about this, he did very few one-on-one interviews. He did, the one that, thank God it was there and we could access it, the famous interview on the Fifth Estate with Barbara Frum.
Yeah.
That one gave us gold for sure, because basically Harold said in that interview, as you've seen the documentary, that he kind of, he was a con man, and said he didn't care what people thought, and said some great things that backed up our narrative and the thread that we were putting through this documentary. So,
Jason,
yeah.
I feel like that we were, hopefully we were just able to, fill in some of the gaps and hopefully explain some of the reasons why Harold was the way that he was and did some of the things that he did and made some of the bad decisions that he did. I think Michael might have misspoke. It was actually the Fifth Estate people with Adrian Clarkson.
What did I say?
But you said Barbara Frum. That's all right.
That was the phone call.
That was another very enlightening piece that I'd actually never heard before. But I love that interview. But it was, I'm just glad that, but so many of the things came out of the interviews that we talked to people too, like that interview with Barbara Frum came from one of the Came from one of the journalists that we were talking to. Like she started talking about this, this legendary interview with Barbara Frum. And I, of course, was like writing notes. We're like, someone's got to get that interview with Barbara Frum. So we sent our archivists to go find it. And, and they, dug it out of somewhere in the, in the basement of the CBC. They found that interview. And so we were able to access it, which was fantastic because I think it was very telling of who that man really was. You can't, if someone just said, well, you said a lot of sexist things, that's one thing. But when you actually hear him doing it and saying it live on the radio, it's, becomes an entirely different thing.
Now, Squid, as a player, you guys are in the dressing room and this stuff is all going on. What were the players talking about when they would hear some of Harold's comments?
What are you going to say? We would, Michael brought it up earlier, like basically every day it was like, okay, what's going to happen at Barnum and Bailey's today?
Right.
That's kind of how we looked at it because, the guy was outrageous. He said outrageous things. And, yeah, there's CC Puck.
Yeah.
I've got all my Leaf pictures, and not one of them doesn't have a dog in it. So, that's just like Harold. He did whatever the hell he felt like doing, and he didn't care what people thought. And so, like I said, we would just be in the room and we'd say, "Okay, what's going to happen today at Barnum and Bailey?" That's what we called it.
Well,
it was also crazy, wasn't it, Rick? In the fact that like he would come down and like he would shower with you guys and stuff after practice, right? Because he lived in the building, right? He thought he was part of the team, basically, right?
Well, our trainer had to rub his legs before practice every day because he had diabetes and he had circulation problems. So if you wanted to get your wrist taped or something, like good luck before practice because Harold was getting his legs done. Now, this one time, which was a real funny thing that happened, he came down later during practice, and we were coming in off the ice, and he was coming out of the shower. Well, one of the guys had filled one of the hair dryers with baby powder.
Right.
And he's walking out of the shower, and we're going, oh, boy, I hope he doesn't grab the one with the baby powder. Sure enough, he did. He was covered with baby powder. He walked out with a towel around him. He said, wow. I said, who did that? He said, that was unbelievable. He thought it was funny as hell.
Now,
oh, my God. And
we had Boris Salmon. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
No, Rick, hold on. I heard one other thing, too. Maybe you can verify this. So Guy Kinnear, his boat mechanic, who was one of your trainers, right? I heard that Guy Kinnear hated the sight of blood. So, like, if one of you guys actually got hurt, Guy Kinnear couldn't help you because he'd be like over in the corner going, right? Is that true?
Well, the big one I remember was when Boria had his feet stepped on in Detroit.
Right.
So Guy Kinnear, the mechanic, ran down to the door, opened the door. He was waiting for Boria to get to the bench. He got there. There was so much blood. He just went down in a heap. And he's laying there, so someone had to grab his arms and pull him back from the door so people could get in and out. And I remember Builder Lego was at the end of the bench right beside me, and he pulled out one of his smelling salts, and he cracked it, and he goes, come on, Gunner, wake up. We might need you. We might. I'm not sure, but we might.
Well, full disclosure here, Jason, like you and I are kind of acting buddies. Now, I know another part I was going to get to is the Boris Salmon Story. You play Jerry McNamara. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But my wife and I were consultants at the beginning of that, had setting them up with a lot of players and contacts and stuff like that a couple years ago.
Fantastic.
So they gave me a walk-on part. So I was a referee. So one of the games I refereed was the Salmon injury. And one of the parts in that is when I'm walking on the ice with Guy Kinnear, and they take a look at Boy, he passes out on the ice. I have to pick him up because he faints on the ice. I got to pick him up.
Oh my God! Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Here's my big question. So after he collapsed on the ice, he probably hit his head or something. Did he give himself a Neocitrin that night? to make himself better?
I don't know. I remember one time going in, I did something to my shoulder the night before. So I walk in, I said, Guy, I said, we called him Gunner. And I said, my shoulder aches. I don't know what I ate. So he goes in his bag. He hands me 2 packages of Neocitrin. I go, well, what the hell is this? He goes, well, you must be getting the flu. He said, your shoulder's aching. I said, so let me rephrase it. My shoulder hurts. He said, well, that'll work. I'm like, it don't work. Like, it's
Oh my God.
It's for a cold. Like,
That really is pretty funny. Now,
That's the best.
That's
You can't make
that's
that
Harold.
one up.
It just makes it all the better.
yeah.
That's Harold.
And then we ended up getting a masseuse, a Russian guy.
Right.
Our Katie Tevlin was his name. And then he took over doing Harold's legs. So Guy was able to tape our wrists or anything we needed before practice.
Well,
He wasn't
Squid,
very good at that either.
Squid, here's the other story.
Wrench and he can fix a bolt.
Hey, Squid, here's the other story you can tell the boys too. Maybe you guys don't know this one, but Harold, one of the, we'll get into the business side in a couple seconds, but one of the things he did, he used to have tickets and scalp them. And he had his illegitimate son apparently scalping the tickets for him, and Harold's pocketing the cash. But that scalper, well, Squid, you tell the story about training camp.
Well, I'm not really sure whether he is his illegitimate son or not, but that was the story. So we start training camp, and there's 4 teams, and you scrimmage in the morning, then you skate in the afternoon. Well, here's this guy who was scalping the tickets. He's on the ice. They gave him a tryout. and
What?
Oh, you got to be kidding me! Like really? Like this is ridiculous. I mean, the guy could not keep up at all, and I think he was gone after a day and a half. So I think they said, "Okay, you're out of here." But here was Harold giving this guy a tryout.
Only in Toronto. Only in Toronto. Well, anyway, now, Michael, the CBC's involvement, did they give you complete creative control? And was there any subject they asked you to tone down or eliminate?
Well, as far as complete control, no. I mean, they approve the cuts.
Okay.
That's just, the way it works. You provide a cut and they give notes, and you go to work on those notes, and some notes you fix, some you can't.
Okay.
And it's just what it is. It's a process back and forth. And they gave some good notes, and we responded, and some notes we fought for when we really thought, no, we don't agree. We're not going to do that. And that just comes with how much you care about whether you get your next one with them. So, there's also the politics of it. So it's just a process, and it's never fun for either party probably, but.
Well, the reason I was going with that was because there was the one contentious issue with, with the women going in a locker room and Harold's famous comment. And that one, Squid and I had that sent to us about a year ago by somebody. I think Steve Thomas sent it to us, and he found it, and we listened to that. That would be one that's an eye opener for anybody watching and not knowing that story.
Oh yeah, I would have laid across a train track if they, I wanted that in. That's so critical. Spoke so many things that we were talking about in the documentary. I actually played golf with Steve Thomas this summer when we talked about that. When he found out I was doing the documentary. But yeah, I mean, there were things that we had to take out that were quite funny. We had to take them out. I mean, you just have to find a balance, and it's just what it is. So everybody's maybe a little unhappy at the end. That means it's a good negotiations just occurred, So
well, let me go to Jason on this one then. So it's just right along those lines. How difficult was it to keep the narrative in perspective regarding the time period versus comparatives today, or some eccentric owner, or even a political incorrect figure like Donald Trump? I mean, Ballard could compare to all these guys.
No, yeah, 100%. Well, I think that. Even looking at him through a 2023 lens, so many things he did were way Offside. But even looking at him through an '80s lens or a '70s lens, he was out of bounds even back then. Which is saying something, because you could get away with a lot back then.
Yeah.
But he was even crossing the line back then. I mean, he was. He really. I think Rick said it best in the movie, that Harold really didn't give a shit.
Yep. Well, just along those lines, for all three of you guys can answer it. Any subject you felt uncomfortable talking about or just didn't want to? Squid, let's go to you.
No, not really. I would have said whatever the heck I wanted to, because first of all, he's not around anymore. So
He can't fire you.
he can't break me again. And, you know what? I didn't really care. I just wanted to be honest about my time there and my dealings with Harold and that sort of thing. I didn't want anybody to think that I was worried about saying anything bad about Harold Ballard, because I wasn't going to say a whole lot of nice things.
Yeah. Michael?
My thing was I didn't want to pile on.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be as balanced as the subject would allow us to be. So, I mean, at one side of the scale, there's a 600-pound elephant sitting on it. So how do you balance that? But I think we did. And that's where some things came out. Like, people didn't know he was philanthropic and he had a sense of charity. But, as I said earlier, some stories and anecdotes have come our way. We found out, Jason knows this story, at Whistler. We did the world premiere at the Whistler Film Festival. We had a Q&A after, and a man stood up in the audience and said, "I love the film." And we're like, "Great." And he says, I knew Harold. I was good friends with his son, Billy. And I'm glad you showed a bit of a softer side to him, because this was a man, my family couldn't put me through university, and Harold Ballard stepped up and put this guy through university with not wanting anything back, just because he saw that the kid was going to do well in university as a young man. And he, of course, he's forever grateful. He's a lawyer now, actually. And this guy was in his 70s. So that was a huge moment. I'm like, wow, I wish, we could have known that before the documentary. I'm the balance, that was important, right?
Jason?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Mike said. It was important for us to show all facets of him, because he was a complicated individual, like we all are, right? And there were many sides to him. Were the good thing, did the good things that he did balance out the more questionable things that he did? Like, is his ledger going to be even? At the end of the day, that has yet to be seen. But he was, he was complicated, like everybody, right? He wasn't, nothing in this world is black and white, and neither was Harold Ballard.
The one thing quickly that, again, getting back to some things we didn't know, I think one of his, Jason was always trying to find out motivations throughout this documentary, and we brought some to the surface. And one was, he was in debt. Like, you assume, oh, you're the owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're sitting on a pile of gold, and you are. But the banks owned the team. He owed a lot of money, and we got into that in the documentary. And that could change a man, even though maybe you didn't want everybody to know about it, but his DNA was changed when he took on $14 million of debt back in 1970, 71. Like, that was a lot of money back then. So if that made him maybe the way he is, then there's one thing I didn't know,
Well, one of the side businesses, the Davis Printing and a couple of other businesses went under. The Ticats were bleeding them dry. It was like $4 million going out, $5 million coming in the front door and $4 million going out the back door to support that. All the machines in the gardens was antiquated. It hadn't been updated since 1931. What people don't realize, and you guys do, but the concession stands. They weren't even updated with modern cash registers to control the sales. So he was probably getting robbed blind. And he wouldn't sell beer till after he died. Like Bob Stellick spent years trying to talk him into selling beer, which was a cash cow. And there he is with a beer in his hand. But, he wouldn't do it. And, so you're right to that point that people don't realize he wasn't really on top of things as everybody gives him credit for.
Well, even going back to the first time I was in Maple Leaf Gardens as a teenager, having
and we knew, he had the skate every year for what was it, Special Olympics or whatever it was. He was always involved with the Conn Smythe dinner and that sort of stuff. So, we all knew that he gave a lot of money to charity, and he didn't want anybody to know about it. But the problem was, we weren't getting paid what guys on other teams that were doing what we did made. So that kind of, we knew a lot was going to charity, and we thought about, well, what about us? We're not charity, but we work for you. So pay us what we should be.
Mike, you started to say something?
Well, you're just talking about how kind of antiquated, the building was. Maple Leaf Gardens, he didn't spend anything on the building, and all you had to do was go in the men's washroom, and as a teenager, and then it was the old trough method, and that was an awakening. I haven't recovered since, but those old troughs were there forever. And good thing they didn't sell beer in the gardens back then, because it would have been a problem. They didn't have enough washrooms, and they were troughs.
Well, here's something for the listeners, just maybe to give them a little bit of an idea. I mean, a juicy character like Ballard is a walking, talking soundbite machine, if you will. But you guys, just to let the listeners know, must have poured through hundreds of hours of interviews to capture the essence of Ballard. How taxing was that process, just to give us an idea? And how do you, and again, identifying the right pieces to use? I mean, that is a labor of love.
It was challenging, and it was more challenging for our editor, Ken Yan, who was an incredibly patient, incredibly talented man who did the lion's share of that kind of work for us, thankfully. But it was that kind of work is laborious, to say the least.
Yep. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, an editor is a special breed for sure. Talk about taking notes earlier. An editor delivers something that they're very proud of as a rough cut, and the only thing you hear are notes. There's Joyce. I have all the respect in the world for Ken, our editor, and then our archive producer, who has to go looking and has to go find, if we get that great nugget, as we call in the business, from somebody like Rick in his interview, okay, can we cover it? Can we find something that covers it? And sometimes you could, sometimes you couldn't. And that would inform the choices of what made it into the documentary as well. And there was a lot of great stuff that we couldn't cover. Either great footage with nobody to speak to it, or great speaking points that we didn't have coverage for. And that's the editor's job. And it kind of all has to come together at the same time. And that is the challenge.
Well, just on that note, Mike, how did you guys choose the characters to relay their views on Harold, either working for him or playing with him? I mean, he made a lot of enemies along the way, and a lot of players were pissed off leaving Toronto. And I know even during Daryl Sittler's interview, he looked a little bit like he was biting his tongue a lot. And even Rick, you look like you were a little bit guarded at times as well.
Yeah. It was very important for us to get to, obviously, go ahead, Rick.
I sound like an idiot, but so you got to be a little bit careful what you say, obviously.
Mike?
We wanted to talk to as many of the players in that era for sure, and getting all the captains was very important for us. Gordy Stellick was, he was on our team. He was an associate producer. Was our secret weapon. Gordy's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. So he was instrumental, without a doubt, getting everybody on board. Back to a guy like Eagleson, right up to Wendell, who played in the last, 5-6 years of Harold's life. But, the other side of it was, there were a lot of enemies, as you said, but we really wanted to talk to the print and sports media in town who were around during Harold's reign. That was very important. And of course, I one person I wish we had have talked to was Michael Cole, the big concert promoter. We tried to, we just couldn't get him on board, who was partnered with Bill Ballard to really talk about, the shows in the gardens and that whole side of MLG. We couldn't get a hold of Michael, but I mean, that was the only game in town. I think Bob Stellick said, and Jim McKenney said it best. Harold, I think the quote was, he didn't take any Dale Carnegie courses. He said, "It's my building. I'm the only game in town. If you don't like it, F off." I mean, that was a great nugget in the show. And by the way, we fought to keep that in.
Well, that's what he told Billy Joel. Remember when Billy Joel during his warm up?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And well, Jason, you were talking to the players, so you're watching their body language. Did you sense when you were going to a place they didn't want to go to at times through some of these talks?
Not really. I found most of the guys to be really happy, really open and happy to talk about it. Because they were talking about their own experiences, right? They were merely they weren't nothing they were saying was opinion, right? They were just talking about their own experiences, and I think that made it very freeing for them. I think I think you're right. I think that Daryl liked to choose his words a little bit. He didn't want to say anything too offensive to anybody, but you could tell that he still gets a little emotional about the way he felt he was treated in Toronto through that whole situation, with Lanny, and then Tate pulling the C off his jersey. Like he still gets emotional when talking about that. That was a very difficult time for him.
Well, Jason, just along that line,
remarkable all these years later, right?
Hey, Jason, so along that line, who is the most, and the Stellics don't count because those two are walking encyclopedias when it comes to the Gardens. Who was the most engaging interview? And Squid doesn't count either because he's on the show.
Who was the most engaging? Wow. Who was the most engaging?
Well, the one you got. Wow. Okay, what was the most alarming or the best story you got from somebody that stunned you? Like you just kind of laughed. You said that I can't believe that really happened.
Oh man, boy, that's good. Wow.
I'm going to ask you other two too. So Squid, you got to tell me the best story you heard too.
Oh man, that's tough.
Well, let me lead off for you. Gavin Kirk told us when we had him on the show. Here's a good one. Here's a Ballard story for you. Okay, this one you guys maybe don't know. So he's playing for the Marlies and he's going to the Maple Leafs for a tryout. So they're trying to sign him and they can't agree. They are offering about half of what he thought he could get. He's speaking to his dad and another agent, and he thinks he can go somewhere else because he's basically a free agent. So anyway, after one practice through camp, he comes off the ice and trainers say, "Go up and see Mr. Ballard right away." So he goes to take his skates off and they said, no, go. He goes, "With my skates?" So he thought they were pranking him, but the look of fear in their faces, he knew they weren't. So he walks across the tile floor, up the escalator, into Ballard's office. Ballard makes him wait because he was Ballard. He then brings him into the office 45 minutes later, beats on him to try and sign a contract when he knows there's no way that Kirk's going to sign, throws him out. Kirk comes down the escalator, and at the bottom, there's his clothes at the bottom of the escalator in a heap. And the trainer's standing beside him, and the trainer says, "I've been told to read this to you. You're no longer a member of the Maple Leaf organization. Could you please dress and exit the building?" He had to dress and change in the lobby and leave the rink.
Oh, man.
So, Jason, how about that? Now that you've heard that, anything along those lines come your way from players?
Nope, nothing like that. That's crazy.
I used to play pickup hockey with Gavin Kirk. at Moss Park Arena for about 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So the one story I was told, and Rick would probably know this, before you guys would leave the tarmac, for an away game at the airport, Ballard would piss on the front wheel of the plane. And, we wanted to put that in the documentary, but of course we didn't have any footage to substantiate it, of course.
Gary Lehman tell you that story?
Yeah. So
Squid, what's the most funny story you picked up, or the most interesting fact about Harold that you didn't know besides the financials out of the documentary?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I knew most of it. I mean, I didn't know about the early days, like I said, with the Silver Seven and all that. But as far as everything else, I pretty much knew all the stuff that went on back then, at least during the 80s anyway. And I had to go through that with Daryl there too. And that was very, very difficult because, with Punch put him through the ringer by trading all his buddies. And of course, I get traded for one of them. And so, I kind of felt bad for him that I was one of the guys that got traded for one of his buddies. But at the same time, you got a job to do, and you got to go out on the ice and do your job. And but I saw it weighing on Daryl very, very heavily, and that wasn't fun to see.
Well, Squid, let me ask you this. After enduring all these frustrating years, the ridicule you players took from the fans and from the media at times, is this documentary a sense of redemption for you as a player? And what I mean by that is, like any successful or unsuccessful business, it starts at the top. And in this case, with Ballard at the controls, you guys never had a chance to win. And one could argue you guys performed extremely well under the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's redemption or what you want to call it. The one thing that kind of drives me crazy is all the time I always hear in anything that I see or watch or anything that the Maple Leafs in the 80s was the worst decade of Maple Leaf hockey. And I'm thinking, well, hold on a minute. I was there for 7 years. We went to the playoffs 4 times, went to the second round twice. They haven't won a round since 2004. So was that the worst decade? I don't think so.
I know. Yeah, you've got a point.
It's true.
Michael, after accumulating all that you know now about the Leafs in that period in Ballard, what's your biggest takeaway personally?
Yeah, we got asked this question earlier, and I think it's a sad story,
Yeah.
And I think, man, I know how I would have been if I was lucky enough to own the Maple Leafs. I would have put a big push to win and to make it a great legacy for myself. I mean, I think any sports owner nowadays most certainly operates that way. So that was my takeaway. I was kind of sad, for how maybe he blew it. But that, it's as Jason said earlier, he was so damn complex. Nobody knows why he used the team almost as a way to punish people sometimes too. That's nobody will ever figure that one out. So,
well, where I was going with that is kind of looking. I know we kind of touched on it earlier. It's just that now that you've got the feedback from people who have seen the documentary in the media and so on, and now you've had a chance to sit back and reflect after being so wrapped up in it.
Sure,
that's where I was going with. And Jason, anything different appeal to you or stick with you now that you've gone through all of that?
Well, I'm just as confused by Harold Ballard now than I was when I started. Right, like he's an enigma wrapped in pancetta. He was a fascinating, confusing, vexing character that I don't know if we'll ever really get to the bottom of why he did the things that he did. He's a very complex man who made a lot of very complex decisions.
Squid, what about you?
Very complicated. Just hearing the things that he said, like when I saw that video of the interview outside the dressing room about the appendices, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I don't remember that interview, but like I never saw it on TV or anything, but I'm thinking to myself, like, how the hell do you go out and say something like that when you're the owner of an NHL team? That blew me away. Like, it was kind of like, wow. Like, I guess when you got money and you own an NHL team or an NFL team, back then you could say whatever you want, I guess.
Yeah.
But you can see the look on his face. He did it on purpose because I was saying, Harold, we can't use that. And he goes, well, why not? It's the truth.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, now, guys, was there anybody, now the Ballard family didn't want to partake in the documentary. Anybody else refused you? They wouldn't go on camera? And has the Ballard family reached out since the documentary has come out and said anything to you?
You know, I had some long discussions with the Ballard family on going into this documentary. There's Mary Elizabeth, had some lovely conversations with her. Just couldn't get her to the finish line. She just respectfully declined, I guess is the best way to put it.
Okay.
And I've since heard, though, through a common friend that Harold Ballard Jr., who you see in this picture, of course, Bill has passed, unfortunately, but Harold Jr. saw the documentary and liked it a lot. And of course, it would have been nice to have them involved because, you know, somebody to represent the family and see a different side of Dad, you know, as opposed to being Harold. So that, you know, but so the family, haven't heard from them though, other than that.
Okay.
I guess, Michael, the big thing is, would they have found any difference in what he was like at home or anything, or would he have been any different at home than he was, you know, in the documentary? Like, we don't even know that. And
well,
that would be nice to know.
Yeah, it would have been nice. And that's why we didn't go into the family dynamic too much, because they weren't there in the documentary, you know? It would have been a very one-dimensional take on things and only hearsay and what the media may or may not have reported back then. But, you know, he was, you know, clear. He was devastated on the death of his wife. I mean, that's clear.
Oh, yeah.
And we built on that. And maybe he was a changed man for sure following that. So, you know, that happened way back in '69. So.
Well, one of the things I found fascinating was the fact that when I watched it and you had those two young journalists come on and address Ballard as he was in today's society and being canceled and the woke and all this kind of stuff. I mean, their parents weren't even born when Ballard was around. But here are these kids. But what I found fascinating was for people from my generation, I can look and my first response was, well, Ballard was Ballard. He would have probably acted the same way unless somebody was getting into his wallet, like with a sponsor leaving or something. He would have done the same thing. But it left it intriguing for the viewer to imagine what would he have been like today versus back in the 80s or when he was around. So I thought that was a good twist to put into the documentary to get us thinking like that, to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Ballard obviously couldn't exist today. I mean, starting with the league and their constitutions for the, you know, case in point in the NBA with Jerry Sterling, said all the things that Ballard said out loud back then. So, and that was only, you know, maybe 5 years ago that Donald Sterling got removed. Back then, I don't think you could remove an owner like you could today. So I think for somebody who's, you know, a millennial and in their 20s watching this, they don't have a lot to complain about when they see the Leafs the way it's run today, because back then they probably can't believe how it was run back then. So I think that was exciting for me to show then versus now, and that's how we kind of ended the documentary. And the big thing that runs through this documentary is, for me, maybe I could have answered that question better by saying, you know what, now there's tons of hope. But there was a time back then when there wasn't a lot of hope as a fan, and there was a lot of apathy. But now there's a lot of hope because it's being run very, very well from the top down. And that bet you make when you buy a ticket, you know, the ownership wants to win, and nobody really. And I think Rick said it in the documentary, like, Harold probably didn't care if he won, you know? And when you buy that ticket, boy, I think that's one thing you're paying for is hope and a team that you think is trying to win. And I'm not talking about the performance on the ice. I'm talking about the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, you know, there's something funny. I told the boys off the air, only in Toronto, I went to my skate this morning, and I walk in the room, and the guys are going, they always ask me all the Leaf stuff. So who are the Leafs going to trade for? Because Seattle made a trade yesterday and got a big defenseman. He goes, why? What's Dubas doing? He's falling asleep. I said, only in this goddamn city. The team is third overall in the National Hockey League, and the fans are still complaining. I said, Matt, now just go back to the era with the ownership you used to have. We wouldn't pay for a player like Wayne Gretzky when Gretzky wanted to come here 2 or 3 times. Yeah. So to your point, Michael, we got it pretty good today as Leaf fans. We should just sort of embrace what we have and just hope for the best.
Absolutely.
Now,
could I ask one question of Rick before?
Absolutely.
So one thing I've always thought about in this documentary, and we didn't get to it because, you know, it just didn't find its way in. But do you think Harold wanted to be one of the guys, one of the players, as bad as he was as an owner? Did you think because he went on the road a lot, didn't he? More than any other owner would have with the team.
Yeah, he was with us on the road all the time. From Kim and King Clancy until King passed away. And King used to keep him kind of in check, but he was always with us. And yeah, I don't know whether he kind of wanted to be friends with us or not. I really don't know. I mean, I think Jason said it best, he was so complex. But he was around the players all the time. So I always wondered that myself, did he really want to kind of be friends with the players or not? And to this day, I guess I'll never know, but he was around a lot. He was in the room a lot. He was there after practice, coming out of the shower and those types of things. So he was always down there, and maybe it's because he didn't have anything else to do. I don't know.
Sure.
His good friend King was gone.
Yeah.
His wife had been gone for quite some time, and maybe that was the only way that he could get a little bit of peace was to come down to hang out with the guys. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you we've had I don't know how many Maple Leafs on our podcast over the years, and not a player ever knocks him. And even like Wendell Clark, the guys will all say, look, he treated me well. He treated my parents well. Stuff like Wes Courtnall and Wendell Clark when they were rookies and they were young. They didn't have credit cards or bank machine cards or any of that stuff. So Gord Stellick would be given a few $100 extra by Ballard to look after him because they know they'd run out of money being 2 kids. And he would just pass them off money all the time. But the players would say almost to a man, he treated us fine, didn't pay us well, and we knew he was never going to spend the money, so we knew we really weren't going to win. But they liked him. Would that be fair, Squid?
Yeah, I mean, Harold wasn't bad to us. I mean, we chartered when other teams weren't chartering. We stayed in the best hotels. Well, when I say chartering, except that one year where he canceled it halfway through the year. But no, I mean, he treated us fine. It's just he wouldn't pay us what players on other teams were making that played the same or had the same numbers as us. And that was the only problem in Toronto back then. It wasn't that he mistreated the players. It was just that he wouldn't pay them what they should have made.
Sure.
So now, Michael and Jason, thank you so much for taking so much time with this. With just a few more minutes here, but now with the interest in this and the well-received as this documentary has been, what's next in line? Is there maybe an extension of this, a movie or something I'm hearing?
Yeah, a 4x1 parter, scripted, as we said earlier, is the main priority. The documentary, though, is getting pushed out internationally. It's in the States. Running on some different video on demand platforms, and it's going to be going overseas now that we've kind of got it launched here and then in the States. So that'll take on its own life, and it'll help get this project made as a scripted 4x1 hour. So yeah. Great. And then Jason and I are working on some other things, but unrelated, and
Jason, what about you? You got the Salming coming up.
Yeah, well, that the Salming project probably won't be done for close to a year. It's a 6-hour miniseries, and I know that Amir, the director, is deep into the post-production process on that back in Europe. So that's still a ways off.
And what else what do you got on the go coming up?
You know what? I'm in the middle of shooting something for Netflix right now, and I'm on my way back to Vancouver, and so I'm like in the middle of a bunch of crap right now that would bore you to tears if I told you about it.
Well, I got an idea for you. I got an idea for you two guys. Why doesn't somebody want you to do this? How about a documentary? One I'd like to see on Conn Smythe. Now, if you channel his career, he was way ahead of his time with recruiting players, setting up farm systems, building the gardens during the Depression, the Clancy trade during the Depression, gambling, the crown jewel story to buy the Maple Leafs, the way he traded players, his bigotry, the way he was, the way he sold the guy. Like, his story is just a fascinating story that I think should be told at some point, and let the generation of people now know all about this.
Yeah, I mean that'd be a hill to climb. It's a good idea because I'm personally interested in it. It's just getting television land interested in a story like that about an even older white guy.
Yeah.
So, right, Jay?
Yeah.
So it's that'd be great. That would be a fantastic Canadian story, and we'd have to do more Canadian stories for sure. So
Agreed.
I agree.
Well, final comments. We'll get Squid.
No, I think you guys did an excellent job. I enjoyed it immensely. I know my wife did, obviously, because she wouldn't have been around to see a lot of that stuff. But you did a great job. I really enjoyed it, and I think it kind of maybe. It's funny because I said to Mike and somebody else, I said, "Can you imagine if the current players watched that? They would have went, holy cow, are we ever lucky? What we have now." And they should be. Yeah. Because I think that tells a big story about what it was like in the 80s and what it's like now. And, I would think that, any hockey player in the NHL today has to be pretty thankful that they didn't have an owner like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the other thing too is Squid. When Squid told me a story when Austin Matthews broke his single season goal scoring record, the Leafs invited him down for the day, and he spent the day at the Leafs and all that. And so he went in. So they called him into the team meeting. Keith said, "Do you want to come to the meeting? I'm going to show some film." So he said, "Sure." So he sat in, and the players, and he goes, "Well, we've got a special guest today. We're going to show some highlights." So they started showing Rick to the players his goals and fights. Well, all the kids in the room were going, "Holy shit. You fought like that and scored 50 goals. How did you do that?" Like, they were blown away.
Beautiful.
And had no idea that this guy could fight like that and score 50 goals. Hey, Squid? I mean, wasn't that was just, they were blown away by that.
Yeah, but I mean, I told him, that's just the way the game was back then. And if you didn't stick up for yourself, you were going to get pushed around. And so I said it was just normal. I said, everybody in the league played like that back in the 80s. And I said, the game's much different now, and you guys know that. I said, but that's just the way it was. Like 200 and some penalty minutes and 54 goals. That happened 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, final comment, Michael, from you.
Oh, I'm just happy we got this. We got it over the finish line. Listen, it was a long journey. So it's a real highlight of my own career, and having a chance to sit down with so many great Leafs and hear the story being told in the first person was really exciting. So
fantastic,
and nice to be here for what is our last podcast.
Oh, Jason, you feel privileged. Thank you, guys. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, this was a great experience for me. Like Mike said, it took us a long time to get this movie together, but we're really, really happy that people are enjoying it the way that they are. And this has been a lot of fun to be here with you guys today. Thanks so much for having us, guys.
Well, listen, guys, I just want to tell you, as being a guy they call I didn't give myself that name, by the way. They call me the Ultimate Leaf Fan. I thought you guys did a tremendous job in this. I think we need to do more like this to educate the new generation of Leaf fans don't know about the history of this iconic franchise. Wonderful, wonderful job. Love the documentary, and can't wait to see the new product coming up when you do the 4-parter.
Well, appreciate
We
all
want to
those
thank you guys so
feedback
much for joining us today.